never have put me with that woman. Whose idea was that?
The moment Gordon Brown discovered he'd committed the biggest blunder of the election campaign. Should he be allowed out? Tonight it had started all so innocently. A passerby is dragged out to meet the Prime Minister. She turns out to be a Labour voter worried about immigration, among other things. It ends in smiles, but back in his car, it's another story.
Oh, everything. She's just a sort of bigoted woman. Said she used to be Labour. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You might not like this, but he said, what a disaster. Who got me to talk to that woman? She's a bigot, or words to that effect. And we want to know your response to that.
You're joking.
One of the ministers who organised this disastrous visit to the northwest of England joins us. Our political panel wonder what voters as a whole will make of the startling discovery that politicians may say one thing in public and another in private. The threat to the euro spreads from Greece to Spain and Portugal and who knows where else.
We'll lead again, we'll fight again.
And musicians do politicians a favour and give them a few anthems. P from Newbrand and James Smith from Hadouken are here. Good evening. Labour's new strategy to try to recover some ground in the election campaign was to let Gordon Brown meet real people. Bad idea. No sooner had he met an apparently committed Labour voter today than back in the security of the bulletproof car, and forgetting he was wearing a mic, he called her a bigot. Tonight, in an email to Labour workers across the country, he ate humble pie. Earlier, he'd gone to see the woman whose name he'd blackened and, emerging wearing his newly acquired grin, claimed he'd just misunderstood her. Not a good day for Labour. First, Michael Crick reports.
Voted Labour all their life.
Yes, yes.
My father, even when he was in his teens, went to Free Trade Hall to sing the red flag.
Yes.
And now I'm absolutely ashamed of saying I'm Labour.
No, you mustn't be.
It began this morning in Rochdale when one of Gordon Brown's aides introduced him to a lifelong Labour voter who then berated him at length on several things: the deficit, student fees and, for a short spell, immigration.
You can't say anything about the immigrants because you're saying that you're but all these Eastern Europeans what are coming in, where are they flocking from?
A million people come from Europe, but a million people, British people, have gone into Europe. You do know there's a lot of British people staying in Europe as well.
But when Brown drove off, he was still wearing the live radio microphone provided by Sky TV for coverage, which is shared by all broadcasters. He then complained about his advisor, Sue Nye, whom he thought had brought Mrs. Duffy over to speak to him.
Good to see you all. Good to see you. Thanks very much. It's a disaster. Well, just... Okay. Should never have put me with that woman. Whose idea was that?
I don't know, I didn't see her.
It's Sue, I think. They're just ridiculous.
I'm not sure if they'll go with that one.
They will go with it.
What did she say?
Oh, everything. She's just a sort of bigoted woman.
Now, just watch the reaction here as a TV producer catches up with Gillian Duffy to tell her what the Prime Minister has said.
When Brown was walking around, he had Matt's microphone on, and when he got into the car...
What did he say?
Well, you might not like this, but he said, what a disaster. Who got me to talk to that woman? She's a bigot, or words to that effect. And we want to know your response to that.
You're joking.
Because, I mean, how do you feel about that?
Where was I a bigot?
These were his words. So we wondered whether we can talk to you a bit more about it and just find out your reaction.
Said that, has he?
Well, I haven't heard it myself, but if you could come over to our satellite truck, we'll be able to play you what he said, and then maybe we could get your reaction once you've heard it with your own ears.
I can't believe this, that he's said that. All my life, been damn well Labour.
Mrs. Duffy was then allowed to hear the tape for herself.
Now, you've just watched that, you've heard the Prime Minister's words in the Sky News truck. What is your instant reaction to that?
Very upsetting. I'm very upset.
Did you expect that from him?
No.
I mean, you're a lifelong...
He's an educated person. Why
has
he come out with words like that? He's going to lead this country, and he's calling an ordinary woman who's just come up and asked him questions what most people would ask him. They're not doing anything about the national debt. It's going to be tax for another 20 years to get out of this national debt. And he's calling me a bigot.
You told me that you were a lifelong Labour supporter.
Yes, I have.
And you have a postal vote ready to go in. Will you be sending that?
No.
Then, as Gordon Brown appeared live on the Jeremy Vine show from a radio studio in Manchester, he heard the extraordinary recording for the first time himself.
What did she say?
Oh, everything. She's just a sort of bigoted woman. Said she used to be Labour. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That is what she said. Is she not allowed to express her view to you?
Of course she's allowed to express her view, and I was saying that. The problem was that I was dealing with a question that she raised about immigration, and I wasn't given a chance to answer it because we had a whole melee of press around her. But of course I apologise if I've said anything that has been offensive.
Mr Brown phoned Mrs Duffy to say sorry, as Labour quickly moved to limit the damage.
Is this typical, though, of Brown behaviour? Private with colleagues, from one face we had when he was talking to her, quite another when he was in the car. That is the fear, isn't it, from many members of the public, others, that this is the case?
Do you know the Prime Minister? Do you spend a lot of time with him?
You do.
I do, indeed. And I know the truth. And he's not as you've just characterised him. It's not fair to characterise him in that way.
Prime Minister, to regret calling Mrs Duffy a bigot.
Against the advice of some of his aides, we're told, Mr Brown changed his schedule, went back to Rochdale and apologised to Mrs Duffy at her home.
And here he comes, here he is now. He's making a statement.
After 40 minutes, more than some foreign leaders get, he emerged without her.
I've just been talking to Gillian. I'm mortified by what's happened. I've given her my sincere apologies. I misunderstood what she said, and she has accepted that there was a misunderstanding, and she's accepted my apology. If you like, I'm a penitent sinner. Sometimes you say things that you don't mean to say, sometimes you say things by mistake, and sometimes when you say things, you want to correct it very quickly. So I wanted to come here and say to Gillian, I was sorry, to say that I'd made a mistake, but to also say I understood the concerns that she was bringing to me, and I had simply misunderstood some of the words that she used.
Later, she said she still wouldn't vote for him. The events in Rochdale were all a huge distraction today from preparations for the third and last of the live TV debates, to be hosted by the BBC from the University of Birmingham tomorrow night. That debate takes place in a top marginal constituency, Birmingham Edgbaston, where the sitting MP has a notional majority of just over 1,500 and isn't known at Westminster as one of Mr Brown's greatest fans.
Has Gordon Brown just lost you your seat?
Well, you know, I know what it's like. I remember in 2001, I stood between Tony Blair and Sharon Storer, and I couldn't hear a word of what's going on. So I don't know what happened, but I bet he regrets what he said.
Much of tomorrow's exchanges will be on the economy. As last week, David Cameron will have the left lectern, Nick Clegg the middle, and Gordon Brown once more the right. After the events of today, and with Labour still trailing the Conservatives in recent polls and often trailing the Lib Dems too, Gordon Brown will probably have to deliver a blistering performance from this lectern tomorrow night to have any hope of carrying on with a senior role in British politics. And the Prime Minister may just feel a slight frisson of fear as he approaches the lectern, waiting for him there, not just one radio microphone, but two.
And Michael Crick joins us now from Birmingham, where tomorrow's TV debate is being held. Michael, how's today's gaffe going down in the Labour ranks?
Well, Labour ministers have been trying to tell me that, in fact, it's having no effect with their canvassing on the doorsteps. I mean, I was speaking not long ago, for instance, to the Culture Secretary, Ben Bradshaw, who says that voters in his constituency down in Devon have been telling him it won't affect the way they vote, and they think that the media have exaggerated the story. There's also been another line of attack tonight from John Prescott, who said in his blog that it's all a plot put up by Rupert Murdoch and News International and Sky Television. And indeed, Tom Watson, the former minister and an ally of Gordon Brown, even said on Twitter tonight that the Sun newspaper had paid Mrs Duffy £50,000, but that was immediately denied by the Sun. As for Mr Brown's many critics amongst in the parliamentary party, they've been pretty quiet today. I did speak to one critic who said that he felt that this was a complete and utter disaster, that it showed that Brown was out of touch with working class opinion, and then that in calling Mrs Duffy a bigot, he was attacking millions of Labour voters who held very similar views on immigration.
Michael, briefly, it's too early for this to show up in tomorrow's polls, of course, I guess. But what are the polls that you know about show?
Well, in fact, YouGov have done a quick poll tonight, only 500 people, a small sample, so probably not very representative. And according to that, 1 in 10 of the people that they polled said it would make them less likely to vote Labour. As for the more orthodox normal polls, voting intention polls, the normal YouGov internet poll for The Sun tonight has the Conservatives on 34, the Liberal Democrats on 31, and Labour in third on 27. The other poll tonight, Comres for ITV and The Independent, has the Conservatives a bit more ahead on 36, Labour in second place on 29, and the Liberal Democrats third on 26.
Michael, thanks very much indeed. Well, we can speak now, I hope, to the Immigration Minister, Phil Willis, who's in our Manchester studio. Phil Willis, did you think there was anything that Mrs Duffy said that was bigoted?
No, I didn't, Jeremy. I've listened to it this evening, and I think when you hear what she actually said, I think no, I don't think it was bigoted, no.
So how did the Prime Minister so lose the plot?
Well, I think he just said there on your report, didn't he, that he'd misheard.
You don't believe that?
Well, of course I believe that. I think we all say things that we regret, don't we, as the Prime Minister there said. I think the thing about Gordon Brown is that he's genuine in his regret. He really doesn't like upsetting people, and I thought it was very good of him, actually, to go and apologise in the way he did.
This completely gives the lie to his pitch of the last couple of weeks, which is, with Gordon Brown, what you see is what you get. What actually happens is you see Gordon Brown doing one thing in public and saying another in private.
That's not my experience. I've worked for him as the Immigration Minister, and he does take a very strong view on immigration. The points-based system and the changes we've made, you and I have debated them, Jeremy, have been brought in under Gordon Brown. So I don't accept that. I think Gordon Brown is a man of great principle, and I think that he's not like perhaps the backroom politicians who are prepared to say one thing and do another. I think Gordon Brown does genuinely regret that he's made this mistake, and I admire him for that.
I suppose, do you also think it reflects well on him that his first reaction is to blame a member of staff for fixing up the meeting, and subsequently to blame the media for making him misunderstand what she said?
Well, I'm not sure if that's true, Jeremy. I'll take your word. I'll take your word for that. Well, I'll take your word for that. I think that in the melee of a media scum, Gordon Brown had been in Oldham, in my constituency, earlier in the day. There were hundreds of people there, dozens of journalists, people talking to you from all angles, and I suppose that he was saying that if he'd made a mistake, that it was in the confusion of that melee. I think the media scrum, you know, Jeremy, you've seen it, is very confusing, and sometimes we are human, we make mistakes. I think that it's unfair to criticise, not that you are doing, Jeremy, but other commentators do criticise politicians for being robotic, and then when they show they're human, they get hammered. I hope that this will be put behind us tomorrow.
The important thing, of course, is how much it reveals of the chasm between your leadership in London, in Westminster, in Downing Street, and the feelings of ordinary people in many parts of the country. That's the significant thing in it, isn't it?
I don't think it is, Jeremy. I think people perhaps need to remember that ministers, including the Prime Minister, are constituency MPs. And the views of the lady in Rochdale are well expressed, and not just on the doorstep in the campaign, but members of Parliament come across that view, and many of us share those sentiments. So I don't think that's fair, but I think
Funny
the Prime
then he could have so misunderstood her, really, isn't it?
Well, I think perhaps if you were in the middle of a media scrum, I'm not making excuses, the Prime Minister has apologised, and I admire him for that. I hope that we can put behind us. I really don't think this is the gaffe that he's going to change the course of the election. That's not my experience tonight in the area that backs next to Rochdale.
Might be enough for you to change tactics, might it not? This was supposed to be the great breakthrough, getting the Prime Minister out, meeting real people. See what happens when he does it.
Well, I do share from frustration on that point, Jeremy. We had a very good meeting in Oldham this morning. It was not completely off the news, much to my annoyance, this morning. But that meeting showed that there is strong support for Gordon, and the Labour vote is consolidating in our areas, and that's given us a platform to reach out, as I think the polls there are showing.
Phil Willis, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your programme, Jeremy.
You're very polite tonight. Right, so Labour Party hacks are busy dismissing what has inevitably become known as Bigot Gate as something flammed up by the media. The embarrassment is much greater than it might have been on other issues because of the strength of feeling on immigration, which has taken all the big parties by surprise and revealed the yawning chasm between the political class and much of the public. Richard Watson reports now from Rochdale.
What a turn of events. A serving Prime Minister on the doorstep, tail between legs, making his apology before the glare of the media. He had just left, but residents were still digesting this incredible spectacle.
Well, if you want evidence of what a few misplaced words can do, you've got to come here to the Shawclough Estate in Rochdale, a media maelstrom this afternoon as the Prime Minister apologised. But what about the more substantive issues about immigration? Well, I spent the afternoon finding out what local people think.
Many we spoke to have spent their lives on this well-kept estate on the outskirts of Rochdale. They've witnessed the surges of immigration over the decades, driven at first by huge demand from the textile mills, but more recently by the opening of EU borders.
What are people's thoughts around here about the influx of people from Eastern Europe, for example?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah.
Well, who's got all our jobs? Because if you go in an hotel, there's not an English-speaking person except on reception. Argos have got earphones where they can translate the orders for them. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it?
It's early 60s. It started coming from Asia. We only had a few then, and it just got worse and worse and worse.
And can you put your finger on why is it that that makes you feel uncomfortable? Is it pressure on services? Is it the fact it's culturally different?
No, a lot of them don't try to get on with you. There's a lot do, but there's a lot don't. They're not interested in changing.
The most recent figures available from 2006 show 84% of Rochdale's population was white British in origin, but this does not account for those arriving in recent years from Eastern Europe. Less than a mile away lies the Failinge estate, popular for new arrivals from Poland. There we met Maureen Keane, who likes her Polish neighbours but says council resources are stretched.
A new person comes in, they get everything for their houses, things like that. You know, like they get new beds, new, you know, like everything. Basically, a television, TV licence paid for now and again. You know, like, and basically, what do we get?
Rochdale has not had the race riots suffered by Burnley or Oldham. Even so, some tempers back at Shawclough were raw.
Go to the other estates, it is packed with them on all the other council estates. This is the only one in Rochdale that isn't packed with the immigrants.
Most of the estates are chocker down towards the town centre. Why bring all the cameras to these little estates? There's rafts and rafts of them. It's packed, Rochdale, and it's not a point of being bigots. Everybody should have the fair share of them.
This woman offered a more subtle view and was surprised at the Prime Minister's choice of words.
Jobs are hard to find, people are worried about how many people can fit into such a small place and how many jobs can go around, healthcare and everything, so it's a good point to raise. I'm just a bit shocked.
Abdul Ali and his family are fully integrated into British life. He came aged 7. So what does he think about the bigot word?
People have a right to be worried because obviously they are seeing changes.
Would this incident make a difference to you or not really?
Really, I mean, I don't think it would make that much of a difference because, I mean, obviously politicians will be politicians, you know, they want to look good in front of the cameras and stuff.
On this point, many we met appeared unjudgmental.
He's made a blunder. I mean, fair enough, he made a blunder, he's apologised.
I think he was just fed up at the time. He just came in the car, he was flustered. I mean, it's like if somebody gives you a hassle, you know.
No, it won't put me off.
He called a woman a bigot, though.
Yeah, well, that's his opinion, isn't it?
Not all agreed.
It's a defining moment, and the defining moment is you do not insult someone who was asking very simple questions,
And the age the person was, I'm sorry to say her age, but she was one of our elders, making a very profound questions, and all it was simple answers.
Well, I'm joined now by our esteemed political panel, often imitated, never bettered. Danny Finkelstein of The Times, Ollie Grender, who is the Liberal Democrats Communications Manager, and Peter Hyman, former strategist for Tony Blair. First off, Ollie, how damaging do you think this was?
I think this is quite damaging, and I think it is a game changer. And I think it's because it's the second electric moment of this campaign. The first, obviously, was the first leaders' debate. But this has set the pace alive. I slightly regret the fact that this has set things alive when we've got this structural deficit that needs discussing, and I think that's far more important. But there is no question about it. There was a level of disrespect here for a voter, and she was asking, I've heard it over and over again, played over and over again, and the questions she was asking were legitimate questions.
They were moderate, weren't they?
It is not the Prescott punch moment where everyone can just dismiss it. I think it's more important.
I think there's been a lot of sanctimonious drivel about this all day. We've all done it, haven't we? We've been to a party, we've been chatty and lovey-dovey with everyone, and in the car on the way back we turned to our partner and said, did you see what she was wearing? Did you hear what he was talking about?
Yeah, but you weren't asking for their vote, and you hadn't just publicly, in front of the media, paraded them around as loyal Labour supporters.
No, we've all done something very similar. Politicians...
No, we haven't.
Yes, we have. I bet you go out after here sometimes, on your own, put your feet up and say, well, he was lying through his teeth today, but you wouldn't want that broadcast...
He says that on air, though.
He says that on air. You wouldn't want that in the paper the following day, would you, Jeremy?
No, but this is
comments you wouldn't want
this was a stunt staged by the Prime Minister's office for the benefit of the media to present one impression when in private he had another.
Peter,
now, what do you
look, if something goes wrong, you afterwards are very frustrated about it off air.
Nothing went wrong.
I remember.
Nothing went wrong.
I mean, look, Peter, I find it actually quite enticing that Gordon Brown isn't quite how he appears in public. But that having been said, the damaging thing for him wasn't so much the things he said in the car, but the appearance of being lovey-dovey with the woman before he got into the car. I don't think it's to define. Well,
we schmooze people, but then say, "Oh, who on earth?"
To define now, we know what he says after the programme.
Yeah.
But
I'll let you out of our sight.
It's a problem,
We've all done it.
It's a problem, though, for Labour, but I think it's probably already... The reason why I don't think it's a game-changer is I think it's priced into Gordon Brown already. I think the electorate's come to suspect this. I don't think it'll torpedo the campaign because the campaign is sunk already.
And the media's been saying this in a totally overhyped way today. It torpedoes the campaign or whatever. What it often does, these things, is confirm what people may think already.
But it will be flashing through tomorrow night.
No, I think if you don't like Gordon Brown, this is the thing that might say...
No,
I mean, to give you an example, people who didn't like... Everyone said of '92 it was the Sheffield rally that did it. Nonsense.
It didn't help.
It didn't help. People who didn't like Kinnock thought this confirmed something about him. Of course it wasn't the main issue. This isn't
it's
the
emblematic.
big issue. For some people who don't like Gordon, this will confirm, that's it, we don't like Gordon. I don't think it's a game changer.
Tomorrow night,
as well as...
No, tomorrow night is incredibly important, but what will be going through everyone's minds will not only be how come you're giving that answer when it's 13 years that you've been in power? But it will also be how believable are you, given that you said this? And I can guarantee something else about tomorrow night. He will not be saying, I met a woman in Rochdale yesterday.
The issue is toxic from also because of immigration, because it's implying that people who raise the issue of immigration are bigoted in his mind. And that's something lots of voters fear. You often hear it on doorsteps, as we all know. It's an issue that you get in qualitative research a lot of the time, people having a feeling that whenever I raise immigration, the establishment think I'm bigoted.
As if Labour hadn't thought of that. Actually, one of the surprising things about Labour's manifesto this time round, when I was reading it through, was actually how tough it was. They had tried to inoculate themselves on immigration, and I don't think the campaign actually minds talking about immigration. It thinks it's got quite
but this undermines that very badly.
But I think it thinks it's got quite a tough policy, so that's why his comment is actually surprising. I don't think Gordon thinks it's a bad area for Labour.
Do you think he doesn't even think what he said?
Ollie's already mentioned
I don't think he believes that.
Ollie's already mentioned the debates. The killer blow tomorrow night, do you think?
Personally, I think that the first debate will turn out to be the defining, game-changing moment of the campaign, and that this debate, while it will be interesting and important, and the debates have struck, I think, certainly me, as more significant in the campaign than I'd anticipated they would be. I don't think this will change as much as the first did.
I don't agree, because I think that tomorrow night is the critical issue, and it's the issue that everyone has been getting angrier and angrier about, and that is about the structural deficit and the economic crisis, and that has been heightened today by the main story, which has been about Greece and what has been going on there. And I think tomorrow night is an absolutely critical night when all three of them, frankly, will need to open up to the public and give a little bit more insight about what is to come.
Well, there have been two bigger stories than today's of the campaign. One is Clegg, the other is how did the Tories throw away a 15-point lead. And if you look at it, no one has commented on this at the moment, is that at the moment the Tories are polling the same as Michael Howard. So they've had all this modernisation. They're actually at roughly the same level as they were 5 years ago. That's the story of this campaign.
But what do you think is going to happen in the debate tomorrow night,
what I was going to say is, how was it that in 90 minutes Clegg took away 4 years of modernisation and the change candidate from Cameron? That is the story of this campaign.
And I think it's one of the stories of the campaign.
I can't believe how unscrutinised Cameron has got. He literally, you've had all the Tory press at you the whole time. Gordon's been completely mauled for several years. Cameron is walking completely, dancing through this campaign, completely unchallenged.
I don't think he feels like that.
What do you mean, completely unchallenged? No one has looked at the Tory candidates properly and shown that they're more right-wing than ever before. They scratched the surface and the Tories haven't changed at all. No one's saying any of that. No one's actually attacked...
I don't agree with that judgment. I think, and I also don't. And I also think at the end of the campaign, we'll see that one of probably the biggest thing that will happen in this campaign is the meltdown of the Labour Party. I mean, we're in danger of becoming caricatures of...
What's the toughest article about Cameron in this campaign that he would have had any worry about at central office? You've had to fend off for Nick Clegg.
For me, the article of this campaign was David Yelland, the former editor of The Sun, talking about how the Murdoch Empire have been told to ignore the Lib Dems over many, many years.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't
that for me is the critical article of the
So we're going to have to come. We did have our readers to think about.
Ooh, a low blow on which to end. Thank you very much, all of you. We'll be returning to the election later in the programme. Well, we'll have the last in our party anthem series. 3 bands were given the challenge of setting the party manifestos to music. We'll find out what they came up with. Now, just in case anyone in this country is tempted to feel too panicked about the state of national finances, there's always Greece. Not to put too fine a point upon it, it's a basket case with possible public spending cuts to make your eyes water. It's the biggest challenge the euro currency has yet faced, and today it looked as if the contagion could spread to Portugal and Spain. Our economics editor, Paul Mason, reports.
A spectre is haunting Europe. It's called contagion. It's the fear that the euro institutions will fail to bail out Greece, that other countries will face bankruptcy. And today, it got worse.
It's not the question of the danger of contagion. Contagion has already happened. This is like Ebola. When you realize you have it, you have to cut your leg off in order to survive.
To the echo of daily protests, Greece has taken the European monetary system to the brink of failure. Its debts were downgraded to junk last night. Then Portugal was downgraded, and today Spain. Greece had been promised a €45 billion bailout, but Europe's leaders at a crisis meeting today did not deliver.
We've just talked, and it's absolutely clear that the negotiations with the Greek government, the European Commission and the IMF must be accelerated. We hope they may be concluded in the next few days.
This is what contagion looks like. If you've lent the Greek government money, the cost of insuring yourself against losing it all has rocketed. And now the same is happening to Portugal. What investors are worried about is that as the Greek bailout happens, they lose some of their money. This is known as restructuring, and it would force the banks, hedge funds, pension funds to share the pain with the Greek people by taking a percentage cut on what they're owed. But government debt is supposed to be safe. Markets are traumatised.
To be honest, I think there's been a high level of complacency among investors over the outcome of this Greece crisis, because I think many felt that there would be a bailout much sooner and really couldn't imagine that we'd get to this point. And if they do take big losses, I think many of these investors aren't going to come back to this market for quite a long time to come, which means that we're not looking at potentially just one bailout, but potentially further support measures to underpin the government market going forward.
And that's not just Greece.
No, absolutely, and the risk is that it's now spiralling out towards Portugal, may subsume Spain.
And Spain is the problem. It's 5 times bigger than Greece and facing 5 years of stagnation. With its credit score downgraded 1 notch today, its stock market fell 3%. A debt crisis in Spain would be a Lehman-scale event, which is why politicians here want swift action.
It's very important for all of Europe, including our country, that the problems in Greece are resolved very, very quickly. Now, the primary responsibility lies with the other countries that are in the euro, along with Greece. And they've said they're going to make money available. They've got to do that as quickly as possible.
It's a long way from Greece to Britain. We've got our own currency and our tax system actually works. But if the contagion spreads, our financial immune system is already compromised.
If countries start to default, and those countries start to get bigger and bigger, then people will not lend Britain the 100+ billion it's going to need in the next 12 months. And then the 12 months after that, it's going to be another 100 billion they're going to need. And if we can't get the money, that's it. That's how you get into sovereign default, because your debts are larger than the money you can fund. The credit crunch we've seen in banks, which were too big to fail until they did, applies just as well to countries.
What's clear tonight is that for Greece, 45 billion is not enough. To end contagion may cost 120 billion, according to the IMF. At stake, the future of the Eurozone itself.
Paul Mason now. This time in a week, it'll almost all be over. The election happens tomorrow week, although it is, of course, entirely possible we won't know precisely who will be our new rulers until a good time after that. It would be something of an exaggeration to say that the last few weeks of campaigning have passed in a blizzard of catchy slogans, eye-catching images, or indeed hummable tunes, especially hummable tunes. If you've been watching regularly, you'll know that Danny Robbins has been doing his best to help parties out, cutting through to younger voters with an anthem. Tonight, the final countdown.
The moment of truth has arrived. Armed with the Newsnight boombox and an entirely impartial outfit, it's time for me to unleash our election anthems on you, the public. We've shot pop videos with every expense spared.
Sorry, I think we need some more water.
And I'm going to be testing out the songs in one of the UK's tightest three-way marginals. Will we rock the vote?
A bit wishy-washy.
Wishy-washy?
Yes.
That's UK grime, that's rap.
Wishy-washy.
So, to our first anthem, Labour. I met Culture Secretary Ben Bradshaw to brainstorm ideas for 2010's answer to Things Can Only Get Better. Then, I got in touch with trendy new rave band, Hadouken. This is the result.
We'll brave the stormy tide, we're on the other side. Remember them, we are the national health, and we'll be the ones to help. Remember them. We'll lead again, we'll fight again, we'll lead again, we'll fight again.
None of our bands necessarily support the parties they're singing for. They've undertaken it as an unusual musical challenge. So, what will the voters make of their efforts?
Yeah, I like it. You would vote Labour if you had that music. She would too.
A danceable tune?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah.
Do you think dancing could swing the vote?
I don't think so, no.
'Cause we are the people's fight. We are the ones to die. Remember them. We fix the roof for shelter. We'll be the ones to help you. Remember them. And things would only get worse,
What about the messages in there? Remember them, and things could only get worse under the Conservatives. Is that their selling point?
I think they haven't really got any other point because they've messed up pretty bad. So instead of trying to focus the blame on them, they're trying to divert it towards Conservatives. So I think, yeah, it works.
Time for anthem number 2. For the Lib Dems, I met Sarah Tether. She wanted a song that let voters know her party were a break from the same old red-blue, blue-red politics. So, in the yellow corner, deeply dippy pop legends, Right Said Fred.
Are you all tired of the norm? Well, now is the time for reform. There's nothing strange about fairness and change. It's just that you've never had before.
It's been a party or two, and change is long overdue, and now it all comes tumbling down. Vinny and Nick, you know they won't miss a trick, because they clean and sound as a pound.
It sounds like a pub sing-along thing.
A bit Chas and Dave.
Yeah.
Do you think this could change the way people vote?
I think it would make people listen to the Lib Dems more, because I think they'd start to remember it and pick it up.
That would be the song that would make me vote.
Yeah?
It's been a party or two, just the reds and the blues, now it all comes tumbling down. Cameron and Brown, take a look at them now, we're gonna run those cats out of town.
Last but not least, the Conservatives. I met Grant Shapps, who was partial to R&B music and wanted to let people know that the Conservatives would offer change and weren't just a one-man band. So, I put in a call to South London grime crew, New Brand.
P, don't really watch TV, but I'm good friends with David C. Got him and Samantha on the FB. His profile picture was a big tree. I said, Dave, what does this mean? He said, vote blue, then we go green. And I can't stress NHS, and I got a whole cabinet, it's not just me.
It's all Cameron, Osborne and Liam Fox. Please don't mistake them for eating tops. Blue, not orange, but the future's bright. Cut the runways, provide a green light. Vote blue if you love Mr. William Hague or Mr. Greg Clark or Theresa May. Cut the debt, not the NHS. Tell me, do you think it's time for a change?
Sunday, we're going the whole way. It only takes one change, one change, one change. From Monday to Sunday, we're going the whole way. It only takes one change.
I like the bit about don't cut the NHS, cut the debt.
It's kind of poppy, it's hip, it's in, and it's appealing to the young crowd.
So rap could be what the Tories are lacking right now?
Yes, yes. There's rap and rap. I mean, there's rap with nice words and there's other rap with pretty horrible words, aren't there?
Yeah, we didn't let them swear at all.
Yes, no, that's nice. That's nice rap, yes.
We want a new country where the unemployed don't go hungry. Better schools, more curriculum studies. We don't want to raise no more criminal junkies. As for the NHS, oh Lord have mercy, please save the baby. The government left it in a state of mess. You can ask World Movement, Ross Squad, OGs, Bro, or BPK. Deficit so high the taxman's asking way too much. You won't see me pay. Ain't no party like a Tory party. Might catch Greg Clark or the CDJs. Labour has been about 13 years. Gordon or Davies, you choose the savior. Conservative straight, no chaser.
Well, with us in the studio now, P from the band New Brand you saw there, and James Smith, the lead singer from Hadouken. The politicians who took part in that exercise, Grant Shapps for the Conservatives, Sarah Tether for the Lib Dems, and we're joined from Exeter by the Culture Secretary, Ben Bradshaw. Well, we saw yours last there, Grant Shapps, so let's start with you. I bet you love it.
I think it's fantastic, actually. Brilliant. We did love it. Croquet, though, reminded me of John Prescott. That was the last politician I can remember playing croquet. But I thought it was really good. And actually, the audience reaction on the street there was good as well. I thought it summed it all up.
Nice bit of rap, eh?
Yeah, oh, yes, can't beat a bit of rap. Sums up the Tory party. No, but I thought it was actually really good. And people have to see the whole video. I just caught it before I came out. And right at the end, it goes into that sort of faster bit. It starts off quite middle of the road. It's nice. It's good.
What did you think of Right Said Fred and your anthem?
I thought it was great fun. It's very catchy. You're never going to get the tune out of your head, are you? You're going to be singing it for days. I suppose that's, you've got to hope that people are going to be singing our theme for days and thinking about change. And, I thought it was great fun. And people in the video were having a great laugh, popping balloons.
Yes, we're not quite sure at whose expense, but anyway. Now, Ben Bradshaw, we just briefly popped up a picture of Phil Willis here, where you are, but you're the real McCoy now, so we can see you. Apologies for that. What did you like what Hadouken did for you?
I loved the Hadouken dance album, Jeremy, and I hope to be dancing to it at the Big Chill this summer if I'm spared. I mean, I thought it had good messages. I like the kind of stormy weather, stormy sea scene, Labour having got us through and to the other side, remember the Tories. Perhaps the actual chorus was a bit negative. I mean, it was a very clever inversion of things can only get better, things would only get worse under the Conservatives. Maybe a bit too negative for my taste, but otherwise great.
Now, why did you choose that particular approach?
Well, actually, I think that it wasn't necessarily directed at the Conservatives. I think any party that gets in, if it's a hung parliament, if it's Conservatives, Labour or hopefully Labour Democrats, it's going to be a difficult choice. So things are going to get worse, hopefully, before they get better, really.
And now, did you find this a difficult thing to do, Pete?
Not necessarily. I mean, what it was initially a musical challenge, you know. It wasn't something to say that we particularly supported this party.
No, we understand that.
Yeah, it was a musical challenge. And so, you know, we thought, we've got a tune right now, it's called Runway, and we thought, OK, let's use the backing track for this tune because it's something that the audience are familiar with, you know, and so the youth can actually get hold of it and say, OK, this is something I recognise, and so we've immediately got their attention. So once we have their attention, then we can put the message across.
But is this really an idiom that is going to communicate political messages to young people? Or actually, young people, it seems to me, very often got very many better things or more exciting things to do.
I think if we do, we've got a problem because I think politics is more serious than music. I think music can get people energised, but it has to be more than that. And we don't want to see young, cool politicians with their hats on backwards. We need serious people for serious times.
Cool. Yeah. But I mean, you want to see people. Look, Ben Bradshaw and Grant Shapps have both taken their ties off. Now, I mean, is that good? You want them with the ties on, don't you?
I didn't have one on in the first place, Jeremy.
I mean, the one thing that young people have is, you know, we can have a lot of fun and we can have a good time, but the older people, they've got the wisdom and they've got the experience, and we need them to be leading the country and hopefully not lying to us and
I think
cheating
that
us.
suggests there's no room for young people in politics, though.
I think young people get energised. If I was going to get involved in politics, I'd go to the grassroots, though. I don't think it's about, you know, just trying to stand so you can, you know, take some expenses off the rest of the country.
But it looks, it's the reverse way round to the way things are normally done, isn't it? Because when you think of great political songs, protest songs, for example, the song tends to embody a spirit long before any party evolves around the song. Isn't that right, Sarah?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting. I was thinking about this earlier, whether music changes opinions or whether it just captures a feeling and communicates that. And I think the thing about an anthem is that it should energise your supporters and energise the people who are already sympathetic. I think it probably, I mean, a little bit like James was saying earlier, I think it takes more than music to change people's minds. But if they're already sympathetic, then it's something you can coalesce around. You form a group. It forms your identity, really, which I guess is part of the point about the protest songs.
Sometimes it gets subverted, like in America. I think George Bush used Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen, which was you know, about the Vietnam War. So sometimes it doesn't even actually have to mean anything, it just has to represent the feeling of what that party's trying to get across.
What you can never do, I think, is have the party come up with a song. I mean, it's OK if it's you know, if we had to go write these songs, it would be completely naff. I think Sarah's right, that things can only get better, Dareem. That worked because of the mood at that time, and actually your song would be the natural consequence if they were actually writing their own song, rather, you know, downbeat and what have you. That's the song they'd have to create.
I wanted Neil Kinnock dancing on the side.
I'd be very interested to know how that rap went down at the Carshalton Conservative Club.
You know, when we play that at our next party conference, we can find out. But I thought it was great, and actually, word on the street, people liked it.
Yeah, they liked it.
Yeah,
it's big.
Ben Bradshaw.
Well, I mean, we've had 2,000 new registrations in Exeter in the last month. Now, whether that's had anything to do with Newsnight, Jeremy, I know your figures have been given a big boost by these songs, but there's a serious point here. I mean, I'm actually finding more young people engaged and interested in this election than any election I remember, even more than '97. I've got more young volunteers on my campaign, so something's happening out there, and maybe these songs have helped.
P, is there anything you think the parties could say, either through music or just by way of presenting themselves differently, that would make them get through to young people more readily?
You see, the thing what politicians have is there's always this stigma that they're sort of lying, you know? And again, this wasn't really helped by the sort of, you know, expenses scandal and things like this. And again,
it wasn't helped by what happened today.
Exactly. It wasn't helped by what happened today. You know, so every time they speak and stuff like that, it's almost like they're proving their point and sort of buying back their trust and buying back your vote, you know? So things like sort of the live debates that they're having going on right now, I think that helps because it's almost as if they're like, OK, here I am, this is what I'm saying, I'm giving it all live, you know? And so there's always that sort of back and forth, and there's not a chance for them to say, OK, and slip up, because if they slip up, it's live, You know?
James, have you got a quick suggestion there? Or not?
I think it would be nice tomorrow if the politicians come up to their platforms and when they get asked a question they say yes or no and then maybe explain why. But to be honest, Jeremy, I found your grillings that you've been giving them far more interesting and much better for me making up my own mind with the manifestos.
Well, you're either a man of immense discernment or incredibly oleaginous, I'm not sure. Ben Bradshaw, just let me ask you on the question of... The question of Gordon Brown's boo-boo today, how's it going down among your supporters down in Exeter?
Well, it wasn't a great moment, but I have to say, Jeremy, this has been a very traditional campaign for me. I've been on the doorstep all the time and I haven't been doing hustings, and I've done more hustings in this campaign than in all of the other elections I've fought put together, which I think is an expression of the level of interest out there. And not a single person on the doorstep said this was an issue that was going to change the way they voted. I mean, some of them, remarked about it in a humorous kind of way, but no, it wasn't something that is going to swing the election, if you like.
OK, thank you all very much indeed. Thank you. Now, a roundup of today's news. Our main story tonight, Gordon Brown has apologised for calling a pensioner he met while campaigning in Rochdale a bigoted woman. A Thai soldier has been shot dead during clashes with anti-government demonstrators in the capital, Bangkok. The soldier is reported to have been killed accidentally by security forces during a confrontation with around 2,000 protesters in the northern suburbs. An inquest has found that the fashion designer Alexander McQueen hanged himself after taking a number of drugs, including cocaine and sleeping pills. The court had heard he was under huge pressure of work and overwhelmed with grief after his mother's death. The English Democrats are fielding more than 100 candidates in the election. The party's campaigning on a manifesto of withdrawing from the European Union and setting up an English Parliament. The markets, the Spain's rating was downgraded just as the market closed in London. The FTSE 100 share index was down 17 points. In New York, the Dow Jones closed up against the euro. The pound was down against the dollar. The pound was also down. A quick word about tomorrow now. Kirsty and Emily will be bringing you all the latest on the final leadership debate. As a special treat, our motorway man Steve Smith will be reassembling the Donington Park pundits for their thoughts on what they've heard. And time for a quick look at the papers now. The news of Gordon Brown's blunder in Rochdale is on all the front pages. Trouble in Rochdale is the Times headline. The Daily Mail demonised the granny who dared to utter the I word, I being immigration. The Guardian has the picture of Gordon Brown but leads on the Greek monetary crisis, which is threatening such harm to the euro. Day of disaster, the Daily Telegraph on Gordon Brown's embarrassment in Rochdale. The Financial Times, Brown, that was a disaster. That was Brown's comment, Gordon Brown's comment on his being bearded by his supporter in Rochdale. And the Independent poll latest, Labour loses one voter. Well, that's all from Newsnight tonight. If you're not quite ready for bed, why not visit our website where you can listen again to the party anthems, indeed, over and over again. We'll leave you with the Newsnight theme music, though. Good night.